So I'm Johnnie Seago, just to make sure you're in the right room. And handing out the handouts is my husband, Ted. You thought it was Mel Gibson. I hired Mel Gibson for the day to do my handouts. But so Ted and I have been married 42 years next month. And God is good. And we have 8 children, 8 grown adult children. I usually let that sit there for a minute because you're not going to hear anything else I say for a few seconds, because right now this is what's going on in your head. Is she a converted Mormon? Does that how that happened? Or do they own a TV? Okay, so do they know where babies come from? All that kind of stuff. And the reason I know that's what you're thinking is because I used to take that whore to the mall, right? And people with no manners would come up to me and ask me those questions. And so I just know it's right there. So let's just get it all out. I never was a Mormon. We have only been married to each other. What are the other things they always ask me? Well, just let me cut to the chase and tell you, God is so good. We have 3 biological children and 5 adopted children. So sometimes people say, "Did you mean to have 8?" I didn't mean to have 1. I didn't mean anything by this, So, but that is where we are. And like I said, they are wonderful people. They are either married or in the process. And best of all is that in 2020 we will have grandchild number 20 and 21. So yeah, this is the perfect life now. So, this is a biblical leadership conference, so I'm going to weave in my leadership story today. But I want to start off by telling you that in the women's panel this morning, they asked about our role model, or our somebody that we model our leadership after. My dad was a Texas politician, and just very well known and in our little community, very active in all the civic organizations and things like that. And so now his name was John, and he named me Johnny. Do you think he wanted a boy? I mean, it's so kind of sounds like that, right? So I grew up not thinking that like leadership was a choice. I just thought, well, of course I'll be the leader. Of course I will always be the leader. I will always, whatever organization I'm in, I'll be the leader of that, because my dad didn't make it like it could, option B was a possibility. So I led people all my life. I got sent to the principal. I know that's shocking. Whenever I was, I don't know. I can't remember when the first time was, but it was always for talking too much, because I was very interested in my neighbor, and I was interested in helping them with their homework. And so I'd get up in the middle of class and go over and help somebody, and that kind of thing. I got in trouble all the time about that kind of thing. And so one time my dad, he was the president of the school board. And one time he came up there to see my teacher, and he finally just told her, "You can keep doing this. You can keep getting mad at her and sending her to the principal, but I don't send her to school to be by herself." So that was the end of that. So I've always just been like that. So I did make it out of high school though, and then Ted and I married shortly after that, and pretty soon began our family. Then we both kept going to college, and that kind of thing. That's why we both have doctorates in education. So when we had 2 kids, I started homeschooling. And then, if I was going to do it again, I didn't do this to be by myself. So I invited some friends over to bring their kids, and we could all school them together. And then, whenever we had 4 children, I turned it into an educational service S Corp, because by that time I had a master's in education, and just kept on having babies and kept on doing more classes and things like that. And then whenever my 2 youngest were juniors in high school, I went back to Liberty University and got a PhD in educational leadership. So now I'm authorized to boss you around. No, I'm just, but currently I write a parenting blog called Practice Parenting, and it's about being the parent of adult children, and how that's kind of transforming our culture. That we're living longer, and staying more connected to our adult children. There was a day whenever I graduated from high school that you graduated and see ya. And it was like that, leave and cleave was very literal. And it's not like that now. Thank heavens to Facebook and WhatsApp and all kinds of technology. We can really stay involved in our kids' lives. And the beautiful thing is that they want us to. And so that's my blog. I also have a private Facebook group of over 700 women who, it's moms of adult children. And we encourage each other, we inspire each other. And we have a booth downstairs, and you can get our information if you want to be part of that very loving, prayerful group. Prayer is a huge part of what they do. I also run some mastermind groups and do personal life coaching and some tutoring and things like that. So years ago, Ted banned the word busy from our life. He said, no, we are not busy. We are full. We have a full life. And so I have a pretty full life. And so I relate really well to the Exodus experience because I've gone through a few deserts. I've tried to go around a mountain a time or two, and the Lord said, just pump the brakes, killer. I'll tell you when to move, okay? And so I just love it. I love reading about the Israelites. I unfortunately can relate to them all too well, taking those laps around Mount Sinai. My favorite promise to them, though, whenever they're in the desert, Joshua tells them, you're going to inherit your rest. And I know they had 8 kids because that's your inheritance. Rest. Yes, that's what I want. Okay. So on your little outline there, you see Deuteronomy 12, 8 through 12. You shall not do according to all that you've been doing here today, everyone doing what's right in his own eyes. For you have not yet come to your rest and to the inheritance that the Lord your God is giving you. But when you go over the Jordan and you live in the land that the Lord your God is giving you to inherit, and when he gives you rest from all your enemies so that you live in safety, then to the place that the Lord your God will choose to make his name dwell there. There you will bring all that I command you, your burnt offerings, your sacrifices, your tithes, your contributions, and you shall present all of them and your finest vow offerings that are vowed to the Lord. And you shall rejoice before the Lord your God, you and your sons and your daughters, your male servants, your female servants, and the Levite that's within your town. So that opening right there about, doing what's right in your own eyes. Yeah, so that reminds me of homeschooling a bundle of toddlers and a whole bunch of teenagers at the same time. I was always torn between threatening the grounding and waving a wooden spoon. So I had a little sign in my kitchen during that time that said, sinners raising sinners. That was me. So here, though, we see that these sinners are, saying, can we now? Can we now? Can we stop? Can we stop here and make sacrifice? Can we quit moving around? And then, so Joshua is assuring them, you're going to get to do that. You're going to get to make those offerings, and he's going to accept them. And so you see what the implication is right there, right? Is that they're going to be grateful. He's letting them know right now, you're not. You're frustrated and you're whiny and griping and contentious. But there's going to be a time when he's going to bring you into your rest, and you're going to be very grateful for what God has done. So I just think that's a beautiful picture of letting them know, it's going to happen to you and you're going to rejoice. See, they needed guidance in every little thing they did. Somebody this morning said that they were brick, they had previously been bricklayers, so just think about this. These guys had wandered in the desert for 40 years, right? And before them, their parents who died in the desert because of their unbelief, they had been slaves for 400 years. They don't make really great decision makers. You know, they didn't have decisions to make because they were always told what to do. And so that's the same thing that they're being done now. They follow a cloud by day, they follow a pillar of fire by night, and they just, every step of the way, it's Joshua, Moses, telling them this is what's going to happen and this is what you're going to do. So if you go back a little bit before that to Deuteronomy 2, 1-7, it says, then they turned and journeyed in the wilderness in the direction of the Red Sea, as the Lord had told them. And for many days we traveled around Mount Seir. The Lord said to me, you've been traveling around this mountain country long enough. Turn northward and command your people. You are about to pass through the territory of your brothers, the people of Esau, who live in Seir, and they will be afraid of you. So be very careful. Do not contend with them. I have to stop. I have 3 boys, right? And so he says, you're going through the land of your brother. Don't mess with him. And, don't contend with him. How many times did I say this? Okay. So he says, don't contend with them. I will not give you any of their land. No, not as much as the sole of your foot to tread on, because I have given Mount Seir to Esau as a possession. You will purchase food from them with money that you may eat, and you shall buy water from them with money that you might drink. For the Lord your God has blessed you in all the work of your hands. He knows you're going through this great wilderness. These 40 years, the Lord your God has been with you. This is my favorite line. And you have lacked nothing. Now, they lacked nothing. I don't know about you, but it seemed like to me they thought they were lacking quite a bit. They whined and complained. This is what we know them for, is their whining and complaining, right? And yet Joshua is telling them, nope, you haven't lacked anything. I know you're thinking right now, I'm so glad that as American Christians, we don't whine and complain. We just, yeah, me too. Okay, so Hebrews 3:16-18 says, for who were those who heard and yet rebelled? Was it not those who left Egypt and led by Moses? And with whom was he provoked for 40 years? Was it not those who sinned, whose bodies fell in the wilderness? And to whom did he swear that they would not enter his rest, but to those who were disobedient? So that verse in Hebrews is clarifying. They want to be very clear. Do you understand why those people couldn't get into the promised land? It wasn't just that little golden calf debacle. It was their unbelief. Now think, when you are prone to whine and complain, does that look like unbelief? Does that feel like unbelief? Can you say to yourself, that's what this is. This is unbelief. Can you ask yourself in that moment, what is it I'm not believing? So when I first kind of tried to come to grips with that is my sin, my unbelief. So I had to ask God, okay, what is keeping me from my rest? What's keeping me from joy? Tell me, Lord, what is it I don't believe? And so, he points me to Romans 8:28-29, that all things are working together for my good, that I can be conformed to the image of his son. Well, I'm pretty much not believing that, am I? Whenever it's not going my way. In James 1:2-4, he says, consider it all joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of any kind, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete. And there's that phrase again, not lacking anything. So do I really believe that my testing, my trials, are the ticket to my lacking nothing? Well, wouldn't I behave differently if I really believed that? Wouldn't I respond differently if I believed that? Ted and I hadn't been married very long when we had the trial of a miscarriage. And I told God that I was going to lay in that bed and not get up until he came down and showed me why that happened. Unbelief is not pretty on anybody. I'll just say that, right? But, instead of saying this was my ticket to lacking nothing, I just me and Job, sort of stomped my foot and told God how to run the world. He didn't show me where he stored the hail either, just like he didn't show that to Job. But that was my unbelief. So I have to ask myself, what is it costing me? It cost them 40 years in the desert. Does it cost me 40 days of anxiety? Does it cost me not living fully into what he wants for me? I'm teaching a mastermind class of using Michael Hyde's Free to Focus right now, and he talks about Tesla and some other innovative companies that for a period of time, a couple of years, they asked their employees to work 100 hours a week. And they gave them all kinds of perks if they would do it, right? And just do the math on that. You get 168. They're going to work there 100 hours a week. If you're going to sleep 5 a night, I don't know. You don't get to eat. I'm sure of that. I don't know what else you have to give up, but you have to, forget that. There's no Sabbath. And so Michael in an interview said he was amazed to find that the first people that signed up for that, here it comes, were Christians. And that for some reason, we talk about work-life balance. You don't have to talk about work-life balance. The Bible is very clear about a Sabbath. It's very clear about rest, that rest is a gift to us. And yet, obviously, again, we show that we're not believing that, because lacking nothing means that you don't have to work 100 hours a week. I've got to go back to that passage too, where he's telling them don't contend with them, and he tells them you're going to buy food with money, you're going to buy water with money. Do you realize Ted didn't think this was nearly as funny as I did? That I looked at that passage and I just scratched my head thinking, these people have been unemployed for 40 years. Where did they get money? I don't know, but they were lacking nothing, so so they had money. So and here they have been, for 40 years, keeping it in their backpack, I guess. So this is the kind of lacking nothing, though, that they had it. They had what they needed when they needed it. So you ask yourself, okay, I want this rest. I want this lacking nothing kind of lifestyle. So where do I get it? Where do I get my ticket? Exodus 3:14-16 says, my presence will go with you, and I will give you rest. And he said, and then this is Moses, he says to God, if your presence will not go with me, don't bring us up from here. For how shall it be known that I have found favor in your sight, I and my people? Is it not in your going with us, so that we are distinct, I and your people, from every other people on the face of the earth? If your presence will not go with me, don't bring us up from here. So here it is, the presence, his presence. It was his presence that made them distinct in the world. And isn't that what makes us distinct in the world, right? Our God makes us distinct among all people. Acts 4:13 is where you saw the boldness of Peter and John, and that verse right there says that, and people knew that they were uneducated men, and they were astonished, but they recognized that they had been with Jesus. Whenever Ted's on staff at Restoration Church, and we hadn't been there very long, whenever our pastor, Greg Johnson, called in his mentor, Pastor Jeff Wells from Woods Edge, and Jeff, talked to the staff, and he was like, people will know when you have been with Jesus. They will know, and they'll know when you haven't. And he was just so very loving, about it, but he just wasn't pulling any punches to say, you may be on a big time staff, church staff, but if you haven't been with Jesus, we'll know. It's not that we radiate like touched by an angel or something like that, but they know. We have that peace. We have that rest. Exodus 3:13 and 14. Moses said to God, if I come to the people of Israel and I say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me, and they ask, well, what is his name? What shall I say to them? And God said to Moses, I am who I am. Say this to the people of Israel. I am has sent you. I was a little girl whenever my mom died. And for a little while after that, I would wake up in the night crying, and I would go into the room where my dad slept. Finally, I just started sleeping in that room because I was going to end up there anyway. And it would be pitch dark, middle of the night, and I would wake up afraid, and I would just say, Dad? And what did he say? I'm here. I am. I'm here. Are you that little child sometimes that wakes up in the middle of the night afraid? Or has that night terror in the middle of the day? He still is I am. So you can still say, God, where are you? And he'll still say, I'm here. I am. I'm here. I think it's true that whenever we suffer loss, that's really all we need. We need that I am. We need that I'm here. I haven't left. I was with Moses. I was with Joshua. I was with those disciples in prison. And I'm here. I'm here with you. Jesus called himself I am. In John 8:57, 58, the Jews were making fun of him, and they said, you say that you know Abraham, but you're not even 50 years old. And that's whenever Jesus says, truly, I say to you, before Abraham, I am. So that's whenever he proclaimed himself to be the same one that guided those stinky, whiny Israelites is the one who provides for us today. I am. And in my personal desert, I am is still the one guiding me with that cloud, with that fire, however he has to do it. He wants to guide me just like he guided them. We're all called to Exodus in our life. We're all called to leave a good and move to the better. And so you just have to figure out, where are my exoduses in my life? Sometimes our unbelief causes us to have to leave the old. Yesterday's challenge becomes today's comfort. And Jesus is very clear he did not call us to a comfortable life, right? John 10:10, I called you to an abundant life, right? But not comfortable. So we have to do it. We have to keep moving and not romanticize about our slavery that we're leaving like the Israelites did. Oh, if we could just have leeks and onions again. Right. Sure, me too. But that's the thing, is that we have to keep on moving out of this particular desert to where we can get to lacking nothing. Kyle Idleman made popular the idea of being a fan of Jesus. Remember that book? So it's called Not a Fan. So I was a big fan of Jesus early in our married life. And what happened, because I was such a fan of him, was that it gave me a lot of room to be a glutton for the things of the world. So Ted was a youth pastor and I was in sales. And so just like Esau ready to exchange his birthright for a bowl of soup, I was perfectly willing to give up my intimacy with Christ for what tasted good, like being thought of as a good pastor's wife and having a lot of trappings, a lot of material possessions. This was a time whenever the prosperity gospel was creeping into our pulpit and was very prominent in my sales meetings. And so I fell right in line with that. And I was working for God, right? Because I was teaching Sunday school and doing all the things that a fan does, right? I liked Jesus. He was cool. And I just, thought, well, I'm going to have all the perks and benefits of being a big fan of Jesus too. But that Exodus call came very quickly. Moses had to commit a murder to get kicked out of Egypt. And I didn't commit a murder. But it's pretty dramatic. Within the span of 10 days, Ted and I weepingly confessed to each other, this isn't going to work. What are we going to do? And I had given up, and I was ready to leave my marriage, lose my family, lose my church, lose my friends. I had given up. But Ted hadn't given up. And the night that I told him I'd given up, he stayed up all night and prayed. And the next morning, he said, let's leave. Let's move. Let's give it all up. So within those 10 days, we leased our house. We sold everything in it. I left town, and I think Ted just opened up the house and told people to come in and take what they wanted and leave him some money. And so we packed up a very small U-Haul truck with our 2 kids and came to Houston. And it was a grand adventure because we didn't know how God was going to provide, but we knew He had saved our marriage and He had probably saved our life. So that was my first Exodus. Then a few years after that, we were at a larger church in Houston. Again, Ted's on staff. And so this time, the Lord has called me to leave the entertainment of Christianity. And here's how that went. We were in a large church, and we were producing worship services, and it was a production. So it was kind of like Acts 8, Simon the Magician. Woo! And so we did, plays and skits and lots of music and that kind of thing. We just, strung it together like a little movie every week, just cranking out, this entertainment. There's nothing wrong with all those things. What was wrong is I was telling Jesus, you're cool. You're just not quite cool enough. So let me make you just a little bit cooler, okay? So just for now, Jesus, take that discipleship thing and put that on the back burner, and let's do showmanship. Yeah, I thought He needed me. He really did need me as a press agent, obviously, right? And it was during that time it got so bad that we had a really good friend of ours who was a missionary, 30-something-year-old missionary. And he came down with cancer, and he was dying very quickly. And I really did tell God, look, this is going to look very bad on you. If you let Ron die, and he's got 6 little kids, and all he has ever done is love and serve you, it's going to look bad on you, God. You better get yourself down here and do a miracle. Or I'm not going to be able to save your reputation, because He needed me to do that. So that's a really sad, horrible confession to make to you. But you can see what was the worst part of that producing Christianity was that I was giving a really false picture to the world of who Jesus was. We are called to discipleship. We're called to carry our own cross, right? That world of production is not a Jesus world. That is not fellowship. So we got to Exodus that whenever a pastor, whose name was not Pharaoh, asked my husband to step aside, like that. And so we got to Exodus, and that time we were like, whew, that was hard. And but we did. And so by that time we had 5 children, and we were going to a country, and we didn't know where. So we were leaving. The next my next Exodus was the Exodus of what I call professional Christianity. And this is where I'm managing my Christianity, where I've got this on lockdown. I know how this is supposed to go. I know you attend Bible studies, you go to prayer meetings, you know, you're just a professional Christian. And so the exodus to that looked like stepping into the great unknown. I don't know many people who don't like a certain amount of control. I like a little more than a certain amount. I like a whole bunch. And so to be able to say we're going where we don't know where, to be with people that we don't know who, to do something that we don't know what, and to do it and we don't know how. Yeah, that just wasn't a whole lot of control there. And we stepped out. And the biggest question was, what if I not fail? What if I fly? What if we succeed at this? What if we're good at not having control? That's really scary, you know? And that was where we were. That is pretty much where we are now. Our success in living the abundant life means losing control of the outcome. It means that I'm willing to live a packed life for God, wake up in the dark to spend time with Him, or it means I'm being content in obscurity. Either way, He's the one that gets to call the shots. I think about those Israelites never knowing if they were going to walk for 2 hours today or 10 hours, never knowing if the cloud was just going to keep on moving or if it was going to stop for 3 weeks. And that's what they just had to do. They just had to follow that. I have a little, you know, I sort of thinking funny things because of having, you know, raised those 8 kids, like Moses saying, don't contend with your brothers. I always think about when the cloud would stop, that those mamas would say, oh, thank heavens, get the big tub out. Let's clean up these stinky kids. And then just as she got the water poured, start moving again, more stinky kids. I don't know. Okay, anyway. So, but I think about that. I think, how many times did it have to stop and start before the Israelites said, I give up. I give up. I can't figure you out, God. I don't know, you know, what your pattern here is. Is it walk for 3, off for 4, walk for 4, off for 2? I mean, there's no pattern here. I can't follow it. But it's okay. Because John 6:44 says, no man comes to the Father unless I call him. And, you know, I think about that's the same God calling me, into fellowship with the Holy Spirit, just like those Israelites could have had that fellowship with the cloud and the fire and that pre-incarnate Christ. He was right there. And they kept whining because they didn't realize it. They had everything they needed in that cloud and that fire. And the question, of course, is, do I? When our children were young, we made a family mission statement, and it ended with, we will be followers of Jesus Christ, and we will be leaders of all others. Now, remember, sinners raising sinners? That's kind of a big, tall order for a bunch of little sinners being raised by 2 big sinners. But you know what it was? It wasn't our confidence in ourselves, that's for sure. But it was our confidence that we knew who we were following. We are followers of Jesus Christ. So then we can lead all others. And isn't that what you want to be known for? Right? I want people to see me and say, I get who she's following. I can follow her. And so that's my exodus. Our exodus journey through the wilderness. Not knowing where we're going, not having any control, but knowing who we're following. So, thank you guys. I think we have 5 minutes. Okay, so questions, comments, interjections, heckling. I can take heckling. I have 8 kids. All right. Well, thank you very much for being here.